Now, in the heart of Nigeria, in a time of great change, a man was born into wealth, privilege, and expectation. But he chose a different path. He was not just the son of a millionaire. He was a warrior, a leader, a symbol of resistance. His name was Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu. Ojukwu was born in Zungeru, northern Nigeria in 1933. His father, Sir Louis Odumegwu Ojukwu, was one of the richest men in Nigeria, the first African to own a Rolls-Royce, a business mogul whose wealth stretched across transport, trade, and real estate. His son's future was already written: education in the finest schools, a career in business, and control of the Ojukwu Empire. But young Ojukwu had other ideas. From an early age, he was stubborn, intelligent, and bold. At just 13 years old, he made headlines for challenging a British colonial teacher who was flogging a fellow student. His father, embarrassed but impressed, sent him to the United Kingdom to complete his education. At Oxford University, Ojukwu was expected to study law, but once again he defied expectations. He switched to history, fascinated by the stories of leaders, revolutions, and nations fighting for freedom. His father was furious, but Ojukwu didn't care. He was a man determined to walk his own path. Then came the biggest shock of all. Instead of returning to Nigeria to manage his father's empire, Ojukwu joined the Nigerian army. It was unheard of, a billionaire's son in military uniform. His father opposed it, tried to stop it, even disowned him for a while. But Ojukwu was determined. He trained at Eton Hall in England, becoming one of the first highly educated Nigerian officers. His intelligence and leadership skills stood out, and he quickly rose through the ranks. In 1960, he was sent on a UN peacekeeping mission to Congo, where he proved his bravery in battle. By 1966, he had become a lieutenant colonel and was appointed governor of eastern Nigeria. But what followed would change his life forever. Nigeria was in crisis. A military coup in January 1966 brought General Aguiyi-Ironsi to power. But 6 months later, another coup struck back. Ironsi was killed, and the new military rulers, dominated by northern officers, targeted the Igbo people. What followed was a massacre. Across northern Nigeria, over 30,000 Igbo men, women, and children were slaughtered. Survivors fled home to the east. Eastern Nigeria was filled with fear, anger, and a call for protection. And standing at the center of it all was Ojukwu. He tried to negotiate peace. In 1967, he met with Nigeria's leader, General Yakubu Gowon, at Aburi, Ghana. They agreed on a solution, a loose confederation where each region would govern itself. But when Gowon returned to Nigeria, he broke the agreement. To Ojukwu, this was betrayal. And so on May 30th, 1967, Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu declared the birth of the Republic of Biafra. It was a bold move, a dangerous move, and it meant war. The Nigerian Civil War had begun. Biafra was outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded. The Nigerian government placed a blockade, cutting off food and supplies. But Ojukwu was a fighter. He turned to guerrilla tactics, using homegrown weapons and clever strategies to hold off the Nigerian army. With the blockade in place, Ojukwu's government created the Biafran Research and Production, or ARAP, unit, an innovation hub that developed homemade bombs, rockets, and even an air force. But war was not just fought on the battlefield. Ojukwu was a master of propaganda and diplomacy. He exposed the humanitarian crisis to the world, gaining sympathy from Ivory Coast, Gabon, Tanzania, and Zambia, who officially recognized Biafra. The images of starving children spread across international media, but world powers like the UK and Soviet Union backed Nigeria. By 1969, the situation was dire. Biafra was collapsing, food was running out, death was everywhere. On January 9, 1970, knowing the war was lost, Ojukwu fled to Côte d'Ivoire, leaving his deputy, Philip Effiong, to surrender to Nigeria. Biafra was defeated. The dream of independence was over. But for Ojukwu, this was not the end. For 13 years, he lived in exile. But in 1982, Nigeria's President Shehu Shagari granted him a pardon, allowing him to return home. Ojukwu came back not as a rebel, but as a politician running for president under the All Progressives Grand Alliance, APGA. He never won, but he remained a symbol of Igbo resistance and pride. In 2011, Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu passed away at the age of 78. Nigeria gave him a state funeral, a recognition that, whether loved or hated, he was a leader who had shaped history. His legacy lives on. Some call him a hero, others a rebel. But one thing is certain: Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu was a man who stood for his people against all odds.